He dropped to one knee. Everyone gasped. I cried. He said all the right words. But in the back of my mind, something was already off. His eyes didn't look excited. They looked rehearsed. And when I glanced over at my maid of honor, my best friend since we were 10, she wasn't smiling. She was pale, frozen, like someone who just saw a ghost, or maybe just got caught hiding one. The room was clapping. I said yes. We kissed. And while everyone else celebrated, my gut whispered something I'd been ignoring for months. Something's wrong. It always knows. We just don't always listen. My name's Jasmine. I'm 31. I'm a pediatric nurse. I was with Marcus for 6 years. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, the kind of night where nothing big is supposed to happen. But then he handed me a plate of ribs and said, I brought extra napkins in case you get messy. Stupid line, but it worked. He was warm, disarming, funny in that confident but not cocky kind of way. By the end of the night, I knew I'd be seeing him again. Within a year, we moved in together. 2 years later, we got a dog, named him Leo after his zodiac sign. 4 years in, we were talking marriage, kids, where we'd settle down. To the outside world, we were goals. Cute house, date nights, matching holiday pajamas, and my best friend, Vanessa, who would later become my maid of honor, used to joke, if you ever get bored of him, send him my way. Turns out she wasn't joking. It started like every story I used to dream about. By the second date, I was already picturing a future with him. He was charming, attentive, funny in a quiet, confident way. Not the loud center of attention guy, but the one you wanted to keep watching. My friends adored him. My parents called him a real man. And my best friend, Clara, my future maid of honor, said, if you don't marry him, I will. We built routines, movie nights, road trips, cooking together on Sundays. It wasn't fireworks every day, but it was steady, warm, safe. Or so I thought. It was little things at first. The way he'd get weirdly quiet when Clara came around. How he stopped inviting her to couple hangouts unless I brought it up. How she'd ask, you sure he's good to you? With this distant tone, not worried, not jealous, just off. One night, I walked in and they were sitting in the kitchen, alone. He jumped up fast, like a kid caught cheating on a test. Clara barely looked at me, said she was just dropping off a book I lent her. I asked him later, everything okay with you two? He just shrugged. She's dramatic. You know how she is. And like an idiot, I believed him, because sometimes it's easier to believe a lie that keeps you safe than a truth that'll destroy your whole world. It started slowly. He still kissed me goodbye, still called me babe, still posted pictures of us on Instagram with cute captions and heart emojis. But something was missing. He stopped asking how my day was. When I told him things, he'd nod, but not really hear. I'd say, I love you, and he'd reply with, same or worse. Silence. Our intimacy changed too. He touched me like he was checking off a box. Not like he missed me, not like he wanted me. His hands used to feel like home. Now they felt like routine. I asked if something was wrong. He said he was stressed with work. Deadlines, clients, pressure, he said. I believed him. Again. But deep down, I knew the version of him I fell in love with had already started slipping away. And the most painful part? I was working harder, trying more, planning date nights, cooking his favorite meals, pretending not to notice how far away he drifted, because I thought if I just did enough, I could pull him back. But people don't drift because of distance. They drift because they're already standing closer to someone else. It was my bridal shower. Clara planned the whole thing, down to the playlist, the cake, even the gold bride-to-be balloons that floated in the corner of the room. Everything looked perfect, felt perfect, except she was distracted. I caught her checking her phone constantly, leaving the room to take calls. When she came back, her face was flushed, like she'd been running or crying, or both. I pulled her aside, asked if she was okay. She smiled and said, of course, this is your day. But her eyes said something else. Something cold. Something tired. Later that night, I noticed my fiancé was acting weird too. He was texting someone constantly. Said it was his brother, But when I peeked over his shoulder, the name didn't match. It said C. I asked, "Who's that?" He fumbled, "Coworker, Carlos." Carlos. At 10 p.m. on a Sunday. My stomach twisted, but I let it go. Because who wants to start a fight during wedding week? But then the real twist came. I opened Clara's purse by accident the next morning. I thought it was mine. Same color, same brand. Inside was a receipt from a hotel dated 2 nights ago. 2 guests, 1 room. And the signature at the bottom? His name. I stared at it like it might change if I blinked hard enough. It didn't. The man I was about to marry had checked into a hotel 2 days before my bridal shower. With my maid of honor. My best friend. And suddenly, the playlist, the balloons, the fake smiles, they all meant nothing. Because the betrayal had already happened. And I was the last to know. I didn't say anything at first. I sat with it. The hotel receipt, the initials, the gut punch of betrayal. Let it marinate in my chest like poison. Then I asked him casually that night, "Have you seen Clara lately?" He blinked fast. "No. Why?" I held up my phone and showed him a picture from the bridal shower. Clara in the background, texting. Face flushed, eyes hollow. He looked. Shrugged. She was probably just emotional. Weddings bring that out in people. I nodded. But something in my face must have cracked, because he stepped closer and said, "You trust me, right?" I wanted to scream, to pull the receipt from my bag and shove it in his face. But instead, I tested him. I said, "Of course I trust you." And he smiled, kissed my forehead, said, "Good. I can't wait to marry you." That line, it sounded rehearsed, like something from a movie he didn't even believe anymore. I held him that night with arms made of ice, because now I knew 2 things. 1, he was lying to my face. 2, and he was good at it. He didn't just cheat, he planned around it, smiled through it, made me feel crazy for even suspecting. Gaslighting isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, "I love you," while hiding the knife behind its back. 3 days before the wedding, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Jasmine, one of my old college roommates. We weren't close anymore. Life happened, but we still followed each other on Instagram. She sent a simple DM. "Hey, can I ask you something? It's awkward, but important." I said sure, then she hit me with it. "I think your fiancé and Clara hooked up a while back. I saw them together at a hotel bar. They looked close." I stared at the message like my screen was lying. Then she followed up with a picture. Blurry, dimly lit, but them sitting too close. Her hand on his knee. Dated a month before he proposed. I felt my throat tighten. I called Jasmine. She apologized, said she didn't want to get involved, but something about the wedding posts made her feel sick. She said, "You deserve to know." I thanked her, hung up, then sat in the silence, the kind that follows when your entire world starts making sense in the worst way. Everything lined up. The late-night calls, the coldness, the weird tension. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. And now someone outside my circle had confirmed what I already knew. They weren't just having an affair. They were playing me. Together. I couldn't sleep that night. Something in me snapped. Not out of rage, but out of clarity. I needed proof. Not whispers, not shadows. Proof that would make it impossible to forgive or forget. So I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone. He was asleep, face down, snoring, peaceful, like someone who hadn't built his happiness on a graveyard of lies. I unlocked it. Same passcode he'd always used. And within seconds, the truth unfolded like a horror film. Texts from Clara. Dozens. Saved under Chris' work. Clever, but not clever enough. Messages like, "Last night was dangerous. I still feel you. She'll never find out. 3 more days, and this will all be over." Pictures too. Blurry selfies of them in bed. Hotel room numbers. Snapshots of champagne glasses. Her in the robe I had gifted her for the wedding weekend. Each message stabbed deeper than the last. Not just because he cheated, but because she let me plan her dress fittings, her makeup trials, her speech, all while sleeping with my future husband. I kept scrolling, numb, until I found one last message from her just 2 nights before. After she says I do, we'll figure out the rest. And that's when I knew they didn't just betray me. They were building a life on top of mine, waiting for me to bless it, with rings and vows and a kiss I would never mean again. I put his phone down, and for the first time since the proposal, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because the pretending was finally over. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw his phone against the wall or storm out like the movies taught me to. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing, holding onto the weight of everything. Have you ever been so betrayed? You go silent, like your body shuts down to protect you from yourself? That was me. The wedding was in 72 hours. People had flights booked, dresses tailored, vows written, and I was hollow. I couldn't tell anyone yet. Not my parents, not my bridesmaids, not even Jasmine, because to say it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. So I played the role, answered texts, smiled in photos, went to my final dress fitting and nodded when they asked, "Excited for the big day?" I wanted to scream, "He's sleeping with Clara. They made a fool out of me. I want to burn this whole thing down," but instead I said, "Yeah, can't wait." That night I lay in bed next to him, eyes wide open, heart wide shut. He held me in his sleep, whispered my name like a man who still believed he was loved, and I let him, because sometimes the quietest breakdowns are the loudest to survive. I waited until the rehearsal dinner. Clara was glowing, in her fake, polished way, telling everyone how lucky I was, how he's a keeper. I watched her, studied the way she touched his arm, laughed a little too loud. I'd seen enough, heard enough, known enough. But now, it was time to see how good they were at lying face to face. After dessert, I pulled him aside. Outside, cool air, fake smiles. I handed him his phone, said, "You left it open this morning." He froze, like ice water poured down his spine. Then I asked, calm as hell, "How was the hotel last weekend?" He said nothing, so I kept going. And the month before that, and the time Clara wore my robe, still nothing. Just breathing, shallow, panicked. I leaned in close and whispered, "The wedding's off. I just haven't told the guests yet." He grabbed my arm, tried to spin some nonsense about stress, emotional confusion, a mistake. I pulled away, looked him dead in the eye. "You didn't just cheat, you built a life with her and asked me to bless it." Then I turned and walked back inside. I didn't cry, not when I saw Clara whispering to another bridesmaid, not when she looked up and saw my face, not even when her smile cracked like glass. I just said into the mic, "Thank you all for coming, but there won't be a wedding." And I walked out. Not heartbroken, just done. Clara showed up at my apartment the next morning. No text, no call, just her standing in the hallway, sunglasses on, like her shame needed a disguise. I didn't invite her in. She stood there, twisting her fingers, like she was deciding which version of the truth to use. Finally, she said, "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." I stared at her. She added, "We were drunk at first, then it just kept happening, but I didn't plan it. I swear." I said nothing. She kept going, told me she felt trapped, that he confused her, that she wanted to tell me, but didn't want to ruin the wedding. The irony of that made me laugh out loud. I asked her one question. If I hadn't found the receipt, would you have stood next to me on my wedding day? She didn't answer. And that silence, that was my answer. I didn't need a breakdown. I didn't need closure. I needed distance. So I said, "You can go now." And for the first time in our lives, Clara obeyed. She left. And this time, I didn't miss her. Because some people don't just betray you. They bury the version of you that ever trusted them. The days that followed felt like standing in a house after a fire. Everything technically still there, but nothing truly untouched. People called, texted, some offered sympathy, some were just nosy. My mom cried when I told her. My dad didn't say much. just nodded and held my hand. Bridesmaids scrambled to cancel vendors, return dresses. The venue was kind enough to refund most of it, but none of that mattered. What hurt the most was realizing how deep the lie went. There were photos I had to delete, journals I couldn't read, gifts that suddenly looked like traps. I threw away the wedding binder, burned the bridesmaid proposal boxes I had handmade. Even my apartment felt different, like betrayal had seeped into the walls. He tried calling, twice, then sent a long message about regret and therapy and not knowing what he really wanted. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I finally understood. His mistake wasn't Clara. It was thinking I'd still want him after knowing who he really was. That kind of mistake you only make once. And I'm not the kind of woman you get a second chance with. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in small, uneven pieces. Like the first time I laughed, really laughed, at a meme my friend sent. Or when I walked past the bridal shop without flinching. I started journaling again, pouring the pain into pages instead of pretending it didn't exist. I picked up new routines, morning walks, therapy on Thursdays, cooking just for myself, and actually enjoying the silence. My friends didn't leave. They showed up harder, they brought snacks and sarcasm, took me dancing, sent me playlists with names like "He's trash, you're gold." Even Jasmine checked in weekly, sometimes just with a heart emoji, sometimes with a full rant about how men ain't shit. And every time I felt like calling him, I reminded myself, the version of him I loved didn't exist. He was fiction. And I was the fool who believed in the fairy tale. But not anymore. I was no longer surviving the breakup. I was rebuilding the girl who trusted too easily. This time, stronger, sharper, softer in the right ways. And finally, free. They say betrayal changes you. I used to think that meant you become cold, hardened, angry at the world. But I didn't turn bitter. I turned inward. I asked better questions, listened to my instincts, stopped begging people to stay, and I learned something no romance novel ever teaches you. The most important vow is the one you make to yourself. To never shrink for love, to never ignore your gut, to never let someone else's confusion become your prison. I was supposed to be a wife by now. He was supposed to be my forever. But now, looking back, I'm just grateful he showed me the truth before I signed my name to a life built on betrayal. And Clara? She disappeared. Blocked me. Moved out of state. Last I heard, they didn't even last 6 months. But this story isn't about them anymore. It's about the woman I became. Not a bride, but a survivor. Not a victim, but a storyteller. And if you've ever been betrayed by the person you trusted most, you're not alone. You're just one step closer to never letting it happen again.